Fantasy drafts approaching and the season approaching. Here's a few quarterbacks I would avoid this season. The first guy, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So the Cowboys, they had a good regular season last year with a 12-4 record. But Dak Prescott, it was just an up and down season. I know he had all career highs in numbers, but there were some games where he would disappear and not be consistent. He pretty much stacked up his fantasy points versus bad teams. So last season, 4,449 pass yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 146 rush yards, and a touchdown with 3 2-point conversions and 6 fumble losses. So Dak, he had 16 total turnovers last season. And now the Cowboys, they lost a few pieces this year. They lost Amari Cooper. They traded him to the Cleveland Browns. Michael Gallup, he's probably not going to be ready for the season. Cedric Wilson went to the Miami Dolphins. They signed James Washington. He's hurt now. And they lost a couple offensive linemen as well, and Lionel Collins and Connor Williams. So right here, Dak Prescott last season, I know it was his first year back after dislocating that ankle and that horrific injury a few seasons ago. But right here, the weapons have gone down for him. We'll see if CeeDee Lamb can handle being that number one guy over there in Dallas, which is still remain to be seen in my opinion here. But Dak Prescott right now going about 9th to 10th round in most fantasy drafts. There's a few quarterbacks I would rather have over him, like an Aaron Rodgers, maybe even a Trey Lance. And he's just a guy that hasn't been consistent week in and week out. Yeah, there's, of course, games where he scored 40 or 50 fantasy points as Prescott. But then there's games where you need him in a big spot. He'll only score 10, 15 points. So until I see more consistency out of him, he's a guy right now I would avoid going into fantasy drafts, especially with his weapons limited this season, according to last year, where he at least had a couple more guys in that offense. The next guy, Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. So Tua last season was an up and down rocky year for him in Miami. 2,653 pass yards, 16 touchdowns, 10 in those, 128 rush yards with 3 touchdowns and a fumble loss. So right now we know we got the big acquisition, obviously, in Tyreek Hill, and they added a lot of speed to this offense with Chase Edmonds, Tyreek Hill, Cedric Wilson. So he's got a lot of weapons. I know they traded Devontae Parker to division rival New England Patriots. Faith in Tua definitely is a starter. In a 2-quarterback league, maybe you get away with him as your starter, but in a 10-12 normal team league, Tua is not a guy I would try to draft here. He's a guy at best I would try to get as a backup because he just don't have the arm strength to get the ball down the field. And this Dolphin offense, yes, they got tons of speed and great receivers with Waddle and Hill, but I don't know if it's going to be good enough for Tua to be a fantasy option and a guy you really could count on. Last season, he had 11 turnovers and he's very injury-prone as well. In and out of the lineup a lot last year. Small guy, obviously. Take a few hits. He could be out quickly once again. So right now, Tua is going in the latter part of fantasy drafts. I've seen 12th to 13th round for most part. As a backup, it's fine. But if you're going to want to count on him as your starter, you're going to be disappointed, in my opinion. And right now, I would stay away from Tua unless this offseason he really improved his arm strength and his IQ of reading defenses. But I don't know if that's the case, even with adding an elite receiver like a Tyreek Hill. But I would stay away from him this season, is Tua, because he's a guy I just don't know if he could get the job done and a guy to be counted on to stay healthy and help fantasy owners. The next guy is Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. So Ryan Tannehill, last season wasn't a good year at all for him. 3,734 pass yards, 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Did add 270 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns, so 28 total touchdowns on the season. But he also had 18 total turnovers. And now I know Julio Jones was only there a year and he's gone. He got cut and left for Tampa Bay in free agency, and then trading a number one guy in A.J. Brown, who's one of the best wide receivers, in my opinion, going to Philadelphia and getting that big $100 million contract. So Tannehill here, he's got Robert Woods to work with. He got the rookie Burks, but not much else besides Derrick Henry on that offense. And it's going to be a learning curve here to get chemistry now with Robert Woods and a Burke here for Ryan Tannehill, and losing 2 big names like an A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. Even though Julio Jones wasn't an impact player for this Titan team, he was still a guy in the games he played that opened the whole field up, and it didn't work out last season for him, and I don't think it's going to work out again here for Tannehill. Obviously, this Titan team is built on defense and pounding the rock 25, 30 times a game to Derrick Henry, and that's the way they're going to go here. So right now, Ryan Tannehill is a quarterback I'm not going to target. Yeah, he could have a decent season, but I just don't see it, and I would avoid him. Next guy's Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. So Fields, it was a mess in his rookie year in Chicago. And I know he's got the keys to the starting position now with Andy Dalton gone and out of town. But last season for Fields, only 1,870 pass yards, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 420 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 5 fumble losses. So last season it was a train wreck here for Fields. 15 turnovers, only 9 total touchdowns. And to be honest, this guy just looks to run every other play, it seemed like here. Even though I know the Bears didn't have a great O-line. I know they didn't have many receivers. And once again this season, they don't have receivers that could spread the field and make big plays. I know they signed Byron Pringle and a couple other veterans, but they lost Allen Robinson in free agency to the Rams, and it's going to be tough sledding here for Fields. This offense is a mess besides David Montgomery, who I like this season going into fantasy drafts. But I just feel like Fields, he's got to be better in the pocket, and he's got to be a guy that doesn't always have to look to run, and he looked to run too much last season, and he paid the price a little bit, taking some big hits and getting banged up. So right now, if I'm a fantasy owner going into drafts, I'll let someone else get Justin Fields here. If you want to take a flyer on him as a backup, that's fine. But if you want him to be your starting quarterback or the guy to count on, I don't think he's the guy. And even in 2 quarterback leagues, he's not a guy I would count on. Maybe as a backup at best, but in all terms, I would just avoid Fields at all costs. And the final guy I look to avoid Deshaun Watson of the Cleveland Browns. So Watson, 6-game suspension has come down. But right now we're going to see if things are going to change. But even with that, Watson, he hasn't played in the season. We know he's a great talent. We know the Browns have confidence in him, giving him that $230 million contract. But right here, 2 years off is a long time, especially at the quarterback position, even though it can help as well healing up some injuries, especially the way Deshaun Watson plays the game. But right here, this Brown team, they don't have many great playmakers. I know they got Amari Cooper from the Dallas Cowboys in the offseason. I know they got David Njoku, but he's been a bust, in my opinion, throughout his NFL career. And we know they got the good running backs in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But right here, Deshaun Watson suspended. His status is up in limbo and not playing a year as well. He's just a guy I can't count on. Obviously, if he wasn't suspended and he was good to go with no problems, I would definitely take him in the latter part of my draft. But now with all these questions and a questionable wide receiving core over there in Cleveland, I just would wash my hands of this Watson situation and avoid him at all costs. So that's a few quarterbacks I would avoid to draft here, entering fantasy drafts within the next few weeks.